on a very wet Friday here in Toronto, 234 King Street East. And it's going to be miserable, at least in this part of the world, all the way through Sunday. Thanks. But as Dave's daughter likes to say, it's good drinking weather.
I don't know if she's ever said that, Mike.
You're not around her all the time, Dave. I hate to break this in. RawMikeRichards.com. Looking forward to Will Strickland coming in today. We're going to talk NBA, of course, the Raptors. Game number 3, I noticed immediately after we talked about it being -1.5 Cleveland.
It jumped.
2.5. Who knows what it's going to be by the time
threes
tip-off.
out there too, Mike.
Threes out there
Yeah,
now.
you know what? At game time, don't be surprised if that's flirting around the 3.5, 4 mark. It's
Still a
continued.
gift.
Yeah, I think it is
Still a
because
gift.
when you look at it, that's a 2-possession game. 4 points right there, 2 baskets. You don't think the Cavs are going to walk into the Air Canada Center and win by more than 2 baskets?
And they
Please.
also, the problem is, and someone was trying to engage me last night on Twitter that said, so you think you should blow the whole thing up? What I did and what I said on Twitter was, if you do nothing with this current team, and every team in every sport, there is a cycle of its potential. And when it comes to the end of that cycle, if you do nothing, it's death. So if you're looking currently at the Eastern Conference, and if you put Cleveland 1, I'll put Boston 2. I'll still put Boston 2. But if you want to interchange where you think Washington is, look, they're both going to go head-to-head. They're both excellent teams. So let's say that's 1 through 3. We also talked about a Milwaukee team, and depending on the freakishness of what happens in Chicago, you'd have to make an argument about where the Raptors, if indeed they are top 5. You're going to have to make that argument to me, and you're going to have to make that argument going into next year with the same roster if you choose to do nothing. But I still think they're at the precipice, and that means the entire organization has to take a look at how much further they can go with the framework that they have on this team. And I'm not discounting what Kyle Lowry has done on the floor because he's basically run himself into the ground trying to carry this team on his back. You've got a very expensive DeMar DeRozan, who, again, you're going to have to make that argument, is worth that kind of money because he's the kind of player single-handedly, like the superstars on other teams, the elite guys who are perennial all-stars, that he's in that category. And when your team, for the lack of argument, is having a poor performance that night, you know that he's going to jack up 45 or 50 points because he can. So if you don't have all those elements, you tell me how they're getting better. So when Will Strickland comes in, he's not afraid to talk about anything. We're going to ask him, is that really where they're at? And as Coach Casey, does he have the ability to motivate these players to get them to a level, if that's even fair to say, that you start knocking off some of these other teams? Because I don't even think that maybe that cycle's gone too. Maybe it is. But I think they're on that precipice. I really do.
The Boston Celtics are on the verge of a huge changeover of getting even better than what they are because they got those lottery picks from Brooklyn for the next couple of years. They may pick first overall. And that positional player that actually fits in, and there's some rumors that, Isaiah Thomas could have a backcourt that involves that first overall pick, and they have so much money to spend. Danny Ainge knows what he's doing. Boston Celtics are the only legitimate threat to LeBron James in the upcoming years, and that's it.
Strange story of the many tales of Richards. I saw Danny Ainge in high school. He was a North Eugene Highlander, they called him. And so he was known for, obviously, basketball and the University of Oregon. So in Eugene, counting the moments until he was going to play for the Ducks.
Really?
Basketball.
Okay.
Decides to go to BYU.
Second.
Being a Mormon. And that was they called it Black Monday or whatever it was. And the front page of the Eugene Register, I think it was called. Maybe you correct me if it's Register something. Black. On the front page. Not the sports page. Just black.
That's it.
And half the page, Black Monday. Because he chose BYU over and basketball. And then, of course, as he comes out of BYU, doesn't like where he was going basketball-wise and goes baseball, as we all know here in Toronto.
Toronto Blue Jay prospect, Danny Ainge.
Goes base. But see, he was such a good athlete. I actually saw him play football. And he played both sides of the ball.
Isn't that the truth though with a lot of these guys though that they
A
can
lot of
probably
them.
do everything, and then to add on to it, they'll dabble in track because they're fast. They
He
can
might
do
have,
this,
you know
they
what?
can do. They can jump. They could.
Something tells me he was a hurdles guy as well. It's just like Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Look at all the stuff Drew Brees did. So we'll talk about the plight of the Raptors, and is that the sort of reference that we're going to use on the show today? Because I think if you look at any other way, I get it as a fan. You know, Coach Casey, we've had on the show many times. Huge fan. Masai Ujiri has done a wonderful job. They put together the best teams that this city has ever seen. But that's the romantic vision. You can't romanticize the fact that it's been the two best seasons they've ever had. The question is, going forward in the next season, where are you? Because I have a feeling if the barometer was going up in the last, certainly the season beforehand, it's definitely on the way down. The question is, how far down does it go, and how do you stop it? Because I think if you stay the same, once again, it is death. Last night in the National Hockey League, you're taking a look at actually a game that wasn't engaging at all.
Nope.
And I got to be honest, Dave. I mean, I'm
The old channel changer. That's what it was.
yeah. I just do not see right now any great news necessarily for Ottawa as well. You got to be concerned about Carlson, and so there's a couple of things. Number one, his status for game number 5.
Bingo.
And those composite sticks. And again, I've heard arguments on both sides, but you know what? With those things, it's going to cost somebody either a game, a series, a championship, because they seemingly also break into a gajillion pieces. And just talk to any of the parents who have to pay. What's the average price of a composite stick to play?
Average. 200 plus.
200
because
plus.
I've seen 300s, I've seen 100s. The discounted composites are like 125ish and so forth. And man, these things, if these things were around when I played, I don't know how much hockey I could have actually afforded until I got to junior, where they pay for everything.
Well, think about it. The average cost now, depending on the town or the city and the level of hockey that you play at, how much is it? Is it $5,000, $7,000? Is it $10,000? Because when I played, I know it was $75. It was $75, and there's a couple of teams that I played on, waived it.
Yeah.
That's when I thought, yeah,
Hey.
hey, who wants a championship here? That's what I thought. Might want to waive that little $75 fee. Now it's in the thousands.
I got upset when Sherwood Featherlights went up to $39.99 because I thought, oh, these things used to be $29.99.
I
Now
know.
they're $39. Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
What am I, a millionaire?
Yeah.
Of course, I continue to buy it because Dale Howardchuck uses
of course Dale
Sherwood
Howardchuck.
Featherlight
Sure it
sticks,
is.
and that's just the way it is.
We might
but
have Dale next week, by the way. That's another one.
we'll
might have
talk
Dale next
some
week.
Sherwood Featherlight.
Yeah. Yes,
I bet you
absolutely.
he still uses one today.
But what do you make of, so Carlson comes in and breaks into a million pieces because it almost like a little foreshadowing. Because I'll be honest, it wasn't Craig Anderson's fault when Boucher takes him out. I think
That was almost like a mercy pull.
It
as
was.
far
It was
as
like
just,
they're not doing anything in
okay,
front of him.
Next, go in.
Yeah.
We're done. We're tied at 2, and we may as well get on the plane because these players are playing like it. And it's interesting, too, how the Rangers actually did it because Oscar Lindbergh is a fourth-line center, chips in with 2 goals. Nick Holden's a defenseman that's probably a 3-4, a 4-5 on the team. He chips in with a goal. They were getting some nice contributions. It's not like the Rangers were sitting there going, oh, our first-line power play's producing all these points. No, they did it the dirty way and the way they kind of have to as far as, making the most of your opportunities. Because when that fourth line chips in or that secondary defenseman chips in, you're heading in the right direction. This is a brand new series now.
I look at that as ultimately one team, and again, we talked about is there DNA from a team, a bunch of years ago that almost miraculously loses against the Kings in the way in which they lost. I mean, they could have easily have won a Stanley Cup the way that series went. That it really was kind of too big a distance to really draw a line. But the one thing that seems to still exist, and that's a sort of a franchise by franchise thing, is how do you win? What is the way in which you win? Yeah, people say the Stars got to be the Stars in order for that to happen. And I wouldn't discount that as being a truism. But I think hockey, just like, basketball at this time of year, it gets done by the nasty. So it is third-line guys. It is fourth-line guys getting things done. And I look at some of those dominant Detroit teams. you're going to probably mention names like Dan Cleary. Like you're going to have those kinds of guys.
Kurt Maltby, Chris Draper, guys like that. McCarthy as well.
Oh, absolutely.
These were guys that were chipping in. Like I remember watching a Stanley Cup final where Darren McCarty scores 2 goals in a Stanley Cup final game. I mean, where are you going to get that kind of and then you look at you still have that first line out there and it's like, wow, this is exactly why Detroit was so good in the 90s.
Darren McCarty.
He was good.
You know what? And of all the things that have hounded him, and there has been a lot, and you'll also, if you're watching on YouTube right now on the dedicated Rob Mike Richards channel, you also know that I emceed his second last wedding. He proposed to that particular wife on my show in Calgary. I emceed the wedding, and the marriage, I think lasted 6 months. She was a beautiful girl. Anna was beautiful, but that's one of the things. But that toothless grin that he had, and he said, "What a." He looked at it. He goes, "How that face wants to marry this face, I don't know." He's pretty honest about, and guys who played with him loved him. It's just he's had circumstances that really has made his life very, very difficult. But he was one of those guys that seems to exist in the hockey world on some of the elite teams, which you can argue that team wasn't. That is the glue that puts all this thing together. And that's why, I look at a Dustin Byfuglien, and we might, that skill set's higher than maybe some of the guys we just talked about, too, in all fairness.
Exactly.
But I don't want him, say, even on a power play, taking his big behind and sticking it in front of the net and making it a living hell for everybody that's got, that's the way hockey's played at this time. And so I look at the end of that Ottawa game, and are you telling me that some of those quote-unquote sending the message kind of moves really sent the message? I wasn't really afraid, Dave, of that almost Alexander Semin / the guy in that airplane the other day with the red shirt, the slap and tickle. That wasn't really sending a message to me. Like some of those guys from the Rangers were like, all right, what are you doing? Are you – oh, that's so cute. You're trying to send a message? Is that what that was? when you pulled on my sweater? Because that's just not that kind of team.
No.
And if you're not that kind of team, does it really send a message other than we're panicking? We may not have Erik Karlsson for game number 5, and it has swung so dramatically going into New York. Dave, as you mentioned, is a team that home ice hasn't always been their friend.
No, it hasn't, and I would be surprised right now if the New York Rangers don't win the next 2 games and wrap this up in 6, because they'll go into Ottawa, they'll beat them, they'll come back home, and they'll have their opportunity to clinch. I think they do, and I think they're really waiting for that winner on the other side, which now, because we don't know exactly what's happening with Sidney Crosby, Washington is proved to be a non-presidential winning team as far as being very good, because they've been very, very average at best, and they're not getting very good goaltending. Watch for the Rangers as a kind of a sneaky favorite, maybe heading to the Cup final, and who would have thought that?
No, nobody. Oh, I know there's people out there. Oh, yeah, I fucking thought for sure. Oh, okay. All right, whatever.
You sure did.
Here's a tweet in this morning. By the way, if you want to get in the conversation, Glenn Anderson going to join us probably in about 15 minutes' time here on the show. Here's Bernsey. Told you the Sens would find a way to mess the bed. And see, that's sort of the anti-Ottawa sentiment, which, quite frankly, I understand. And they don't do things to help themselves. So as we are going to go to the next piece, if you're watching, once again, I know you're listening on the podcast, but if you're actually watching on the channel, the reason that I'm playing the shit music, here it is.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, it isn't.
Ottawa, I guess, was jealous somehow of what Toronto put up in front of City Hall a couple of years ago for the Pan Am Games.
Yeah.
If you're watching on the broadcast, you're going to see this. This is the Ottawa sign that they want to put up, which looks exactly like, I think, that shit one they put up in Toronto. Like, people are like, get your picture by the Toronto sign. If those of you haven't seen it, it's just Toronto spelt out in giant white lettering.
It's true.
Is it fiberglass or something?
It could be.
And it lights up and it comes out in different colors. Wow.
But you know what? It was their idea. It was Toronto's idea.
Sure it was.
And it's worked.
And it looks exactly the same.
It's in a good location,
well,
but
people
Ottawa
are all upset.
decided to.
People are all upset, too, because they said they might take it down. Because to repair it, it costs like a couple $100,000 or something. For what?
What do you mean to repair it?
Well, I guess enough Well, I'm pretty sure the hobos have made it their toilet. I'm pretty sure the whiz marks and the skid marks that probably exist on that horrible thing.
So this is funny too. So Jim Watson, he's the mayor of Ottawa. He tweets out this picture and so forth. So they constantly are making fun of it now, just kind of like we are right now. It is located in the Byward Market, which is a kind of a cool area of downtown Ottawa. But
I think that's where the Bear Fax is. The strip joint.
It probably is. It's
I had a good night in there,
It's
too.
called
Yeah.
Inspirational Village.
Yeah.
Is where they actually put
no,
this.
No, the inspiration came from the Bear Fax.
So,
And a beautiful girl named Maria in a place where you could have the girl dance and you paid by the hour, Dave.
by the hour.
I'm going, you got an hourly rate for this?
Wow.
Are you sure? Is this like a dance club, or are we somewhere in Ukraine where I'm not supposed to
That's
be?
a long time for one stripper to dance in front of a person. An hour?
It wasn't long enough.
It wasn't.
Oh, no. She went by the name Magia, meaning magic in Spanish.
Oh.
And she wasn't joking. That was really good. There's another good story for the kids. Off to another great story. Speaking of not great stories, if you're a Boston Celtic fan, last night I think you were hoping for a lot, but you got to realize when you go back to the other team's court, right? It's game number 1, which is why I think I'm looking for Houston probably to take out San Antonio. Once again, when we talk to Will Strickland a little later on, we'll get his take on what happens when you go back into a game 3 when you get lit up. And it is the NBA. So if I light you up one game, Dave, by 20 or 30 points, there is a real possibility the next game that I will lose by 20 or 30 points.
Which makes no sense.
Football does. If they did have home and home, and take away from when it was attempted and actually existed in the Canadian Football League.
That was weird.
But it was weird.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? If you're south of the border, you're wondering, what are you talking about? So you would go and on a Saturday afternoon play at one field, and then the next field they bring the aggregate score forward, and you play again. One of the greatest meltdowns of all time was the year, I think it was 1986, when the Ticats get kind of lit up a little bit at home at Ivor Wynne. They start losing immediately at Exhibition Stadium, and then Zenon Andrusician fumbles a punt. And just like it is in Argo lore sometimes, it all goes south, and Mike Kerrigan goes out and starts just throwing touchdowns. I think he had his eyes closed, and he started lobbing in these touchdowns in a snow-filled, people are whipping snowballs.
Yep.
Everyone's in the fetal position. Guys like Keith Baker were playing, and they end up losing the game. That's your home and home. But in football, if you did that now, just fantasize for a while. If one team beats another team on their field by, let's say, 3 or 4 touchdowns, even think of the odds makers. If it had to go back the other way, there's no way you're saying, well, it could be 3 or 4 touchdowns the other way going back. That sport doesn't work that way.
No, the only thing Vegas would do is sit there and go, okay, you won by 21 in your own barn. Now that winner of 21 points goes on the road. They're 17.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I was going to say or a gross number, 7.5, 8.5. So you got to.
I would
10.
jumble over that number.
See,
that would be fantastic.
So you had to know that it was going to be different going back to the Verizon Center in Washington. Isaiah Thomas just simply couldn't be allowed to run around and be literally a miracle man, which he was in those first 2 games, and also a Washington team that got out to huge leads in those first 2 games. That something had to be different. Well, the one thing that was very different is emotions really came to the forefront. And courtesy of NBA TV and TNT, you're going to see that this thing really got physical, including some, and wait for it, a little Kelly on Kelly action.
That Kobe Bryant has, and Isaiah Thomas is fully embraced it as Olynyk
here it comes.
Gets called for a foul.
Oh, my.
Oubre goes after him. Oubre goes right out.
Down goes Olynyk.
All-out scrum here at Verizon Center.
And there's,
Oubre beelined
right for him.
Kelly Olynyk and gave him a forearm shimmy.
I thought it was Shiver.
Injection right away.
Yeah, so he's out, but he thought it was like a moving pick, basically, is what he's saying that it was. And Olynyk.
That reminded me of a play Giannis Antetokounmpo made in his first playoff series.
Giannis, see?
It's
not
the
right.
play of a young guy, obviously.
So that
Well,
was.
these teams games.
The heated brawl
Bad
right there.
blood all season long.
The question is, when I take a look at it,
And by the way, shimmy is a move.
yeah, I thought it was shiver.
Yeah, shivers. Yeah.
But in that pick that was coming across, which I think I look back at it, you see it a million times at the pro level. But the way that Oubre was there, an elbow sort of comes up, but I think he flops. So Olynyk, when the play is over, is in the corner talking to the official. I think pointing, saying that was obviously a flop. As he's complaining to the referee, the other Kelly comes in, and as they say, gives him the forearm shiver. But the way that Olynyk goes down, I think that also was a bit of a flop as well.
A little bit of a flop,
Because
yes.
I think he saw it coming.
Of course he did.
Because you all know what you know. If you know you got one guy and retribution's coming the other way, you don't have out of the corner of your eye, you're sort of watching him because he did. Because he did. Now, does it change the series? Well, the only thing I would say is, when you triple team Isaiah Thomas, then and are able to get away with it, maybe we see a series that actually Dave ends up tied at 2 apiece. That would not surprise me.
That one surprised me. You know what? The Washington Wizards have a nice team. They really do.
They do.
I
Absolutely.
think they're the third best team in the Eastern Conference. But I think what we're looking at here is, and you know what, fans don't want to hear this. We're looking at a Celtics Cavaliers final, and it was probably marked down in pen months ago. I think that's just what's going to happen, and nobody else is in that weight class.
Gortat seems to give a lot of people trouble. And the most trouble he gives to me sometimes is just the bald head beard thing.
Don't like that, eh? It is weird, though, eh?
Look, I'm not saying that guys don't have it. One of our good friends, Yard Dog, has sported that for quite a while.
Yes, he has, since he was, I think, 14 years old. I'm just saying.
Boy, that'd be a tough look at 14. I mean, you're one step away from Charlie Brown at that point.
He totally
But a bearded Charlie Brown.
Well, Yard Dog used to drive everybody to junior high, right? Because he'd have his license and everything. So
I was going to say a little Greg Oden action, but again, don't
don't
do that.
Don't Google
and
that.
don't Google that. I'm telling you, you're going to need therapy after that. Gortat looks like he should have been in the 10 Commandments. He could have been one of the guys, could have been a pharaoh, or I don't know what that look is. And if the women see it, does it work? Or is it just a paycheck?
I think it's the paycheck.
Yeah.
It's total paycheck.
Well, you know what. Whatever it takes. I still say you look at the Cars. That is the band out of Boston back in the 80s.
I knew you'd go with this example.
And Rick Ocasek must have been a hero to many, many men who said, so you can look like that.
And get that.
And get Paulina Porzakova, who at the time, now that you can Google. You look at Pauline Porzakova at the time, swimsuit model, Sports Illustrated. Like, just fantastic. Russell, tell me that at some point you have received Sports Illustrated and you know who I'm talking about. But it's sort of vintage for you, probably.
Yeah, that name isn't familiar.
No,
with
it's
me.
not in your collection?
No.
No. Are you getting response, by the way? Your Facebook page was with you shirtless up yesterday. Did you get a lot of response to that?
Yeah, one of my friends messaged me.
Yeah.
He was like, it was funny. He's like, his dad listens to you. So,
Yes.
Yeah,
And they were impressed by your mass?
I think they were.
Yeah, okay. Well, who's your favorite Sports Illustrated girl now? Because there's a lot, because they change all the time.
I mean, Jeannie Bouchard was in it the
Oh, yeah,
last
Jeannie
year.
Yeah,
Sure,
but
yeah.
she was a celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Dave, let's not quarrel.
Okay.
Jeannie or her sister. What's the sister's name? Was it Beatrice, I think, right?
Beatrice, yeah.
Beatrice. That's how I'm saying it. Beatrice.
Is that okay? When you hear the name Beatrice, are you thinking?
No, if you say it like that,
Good-looking girl.
no, you're probably
No.
thinking yogurt.
Yeah. Sure, I'll
Yeah,
have
yeah.
some milk.
Beatrice, just like it is in Spanish or,
But
that's like everything else.
Ice cream, anyone?
Yeah, any Isabel. It's like, Isabel. Would you go with Isabel?
See the way you said it
Sounds nice, right?
sounds more promising
Sure.
than Isabel.
Does she come with a bell around her neck? That's the thing. That's the whole thing about accents. That's why when Rob Pugh was on the other day, he started talking about how the Canadian accent is very much coveted in Australia. Got to go to Australia. I didn't
we got the
realize-
accents. By the way, coming up in 5 minutes' time, calling from, and you're not going to like this part,
What?
Naples, Florida. Glenn Anderson, Hall of Famer.
He's in Naples?
I knew
Oh.
you'd say that.
That is so. But you know what? If anyone deserves
Well,
to be in Naples, Florida at this
yeah,
time of year,
exactly.
Glenn Anderson will catch up with him. And it's so interesting because when you look at the teams he's played for, we literally can talk about every team he played for and playoff experience who were in the playoffs and
Bingo.
still are this year.
Bingo. And having some really good success in this season. And all 4 teams look like there's promise for years to come. Because I would not be surprised if the Blues, Leafs, Rangers, Oilers all are part of the playoff mix next year.
Well, I'm still really curious to see how that Edmonton-Anaheim thing turns out because, just looking at it, and we looked at the numbers the other day, it's almost risky to take the home team. But I can't see the Ducks losing it on home ice again. But I can't see it going over. It's -5.5, and you get a 2 for the over. I'd be very tempted with that. Nashville-St. Louis, I got to think, that game is an under. But does Nashville end this thing?
I think Nashville ends this thing. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very close. If not, this doesn't max out to 7 games. I think they took everything out of the St. Louis Blues with these last 2 wins.
I don't think NBC wants to see Nashville and St. Louis.
No,
go to
I don't
7
think they
games,
do
to be
either.
honest.
I mean, they could definitely throw up another episode of a sitcom that probably does a little better ratings than what Nashville and St. Louis does. Oh, side note too, Mike. It is St. Irene's Day. And I have received a couple texts asking, traditionally, what do you do to celebrate St. Irene's Day on May the 5th every single year?
Well, what I normally do is
Okay.
I put up I go to a Greek tabernacle, which
Okay.
is what they like to call it.
Very good. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and I pray to Saint Irene,
Okay.
and my prayer is, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this out loud. Oh, Irene. May Vicky walk through that door and finally see all the things she ever wanted in another human being in Mike Richards.
Okay.
Oh, Irene.
I like the chorus.
Yeah,
I think we
please.
got something here.
Please. Yasu and Feristopoli. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm wishing for me. The other thing, too, that I think is interesting in talking about Edmonton, because generally it's been about their failure on almost every level. When we
Yes.
talked to Glenn, I also want to talk, with an issue you brought up yesterday, and that is Kessler seemingly being allowed to do anything he wants
Great point.
with the stick.
Great point.
Back in the day when he played, no one's doing that to Gretzky. What they're doing to Connor McDavid, I don't think exists on any of his teams of the day. Again, hockey's played differently, and there's also not guys like Marty McSorley, who I believe will join us next week, because that's the question I want to ask him.
Oh, yes.
But does that mean that the weight of having a Kessler who's never changed the way he's played, like
No.
this is on the resume, that you've got to sort of, as we said the other, sort of mix the lines up a little bit so I can get a Lucic on at the same time or whatever they have to do. But that almost molesting can't continue to
Somebody
happen.
has to have a conversation with Ryan Kessler in the first 2 minutes of this game. And if it happens past the 2-minute mark, I'll be disappointed. Because so tune in at 10:30 on the button and don't miss it, because something has to happen. I can't wait to talk to Glenn about that.
Just a sort of little a precursor to some of the conversations we'll have with Marty McSorley. But I do know there have been times in his career where he literally would skate by the bench and ask, who wants to get hurt? Because if you fight, whoever it is,
Oh, just joking.
you're going to get hurt, which is different than the George Larac sort of.
Yeah.
Do you want to go?
Yeah,
Do you-
exactly.
sorry, do you want to go?
Yeah.
Hey, good luck to you.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to you.
Exactly.
Good
Don't
luck
forget
you.
to say that
Can you
part.
imagine? Good luck to you.
Oh, good God.
If he's like,
If you've ever shook George Larocque's hand, I don't have a small hand. He swallows it with his hand. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, I don't have a right hand anymore.
like honestly, so I sit there and Goon 2, is it coming out or is it whatever it is? In Goon 1, I'm watching it, but the weird thing after talking to Georges Larac is now I understand a little more about what that world is. And it almost, for some of these guys, especially a Georges Larac, because he's kind of a spiritual human being.
Yes, he is.
You know what I mean? When you
Yeah.
talk to him, you'd think, what did you do? Were you a minister or something? Or did you run like a a spa that makes people feel good about themselves, and how to cleanse the soul and all that kind of stuff. Because I'll be honest, it is the opposite of you think look. Do I think there's a likes to fight guy? Do I think in the day there were I'm going to hurt you and I enjoy it kind of guys?
There was.
There was
at almost every single rink we've played in.
Yeah,
though. At every level.
At every level. And then once you got to the show sometime, and I would say once you got into the 80s, I don't know how much of these guys, and certainly in the 90s, and then you see in the 2000s, we know so much more about, well, sort of the post-concussion syndrome and what it has done to a lot of these players, which is why it's such a hot topic, that I don't know if a lot of them truly are the I want to fight. And guess what? In this league right now, when you talk about a Matty Niskanen and why isn't someone coming out? Because there aren't Marty McSorleys on teams now.
Correct.
They don't make it. Your ability to actually play the game, have hands, all those other things, it purely just there is not a guy in the roster that is that. And so, in self-policing, I don't know if that really exists anymore, which is,
And the disappointing part is that we're seeing Connor McDavid early in his NHL career. If something isn't taken care of on that Oiler roster with Connor McDavid, we're not going to be seeing Connor McDavid, in his late 20s playing at this level where he should be getting better and better and better. So that's the disappointing part, because I pay money to watch Connor McDavid.
Sure you do.
I do not pay money to see Kessler do what Kessler does, and Kessler's just one of the many examples out there.
You're watching, possibly, if you're on rawmike.richards.com on YouTube, courtesy of rawmike.richards.com. You also, of course, are picking us up on the podcast. We appreciate that, as the numbers have moved up quite a bit. We really appreciate the support we're getting. And, of course, we're going to move a lot bigger than where we are right now, so we appreciate that. And certainly from our friends at Henry's Cameras, Canada's camera store. They always do such a great job. Remember, salute the orange.
Salute the orange.
Yeah.
It's 1-800-461-7960. And tell them Dave sent you.
Yeah. Tell 'em, oh,
here we go.
there you can go. You can tell by the creepy music. And it truly is. It's not the beginning of, some sort of subway in Paris. It actually is our phone line, courtesy of Skype, and I believe we go to the one and only Glenn Anderson. Hey, Glenn, how you doing? Welcome to MikeRichards.com.
Hi, how's it going today?
Well, I can guarantee you, Glenn, not as good as what you got going down where you are right now, my friend.
It is pretty nice down here, that's for sure.
I would say, it's interesting. We just got into a conversation about the differences that we see in the game between, for instance, when you played, and if we're talking about, the mid-'80s to where we are now in terms of protection of its star players. So when you see something happening with, for instance, a Connor McDavid, where Kessler right now seemingly is almost able to do anything he wants to him without a lot of retribution or a Lucic right now, and again, that would mean some line juggling. But when you watch it, considering who you played with and how that game was played, are we at the point in time where we're saying that literally there isn't the kind of self-policing that we used to see? And maybe that's not great for the game, because I'll be honest, Glenn, I'm paying my money to see Connor McDavid.
Well, Crosby's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Everyone would love to have him in the lineup. And I think, that whole scenario of protection of your best players, because I think they're a big asset to the NHL, to the fans, and to have them in the lineup on a regular basis, because you want to see them perform at a high level, at the highest level, and watch that. So as far as protection is concerned, Gretz kind of, they knew that you don't take a big run at him, but try to hit him. But you could try to hit Gretz all day, and you can't. Like, you just can't hit that guy because he's so invasive. And I think that's with a lot of these star guys. They didn't start their career at 7, 8 years old by guys not trying to hit them. So they've learned that process. But as far as protection is concerned, the rules have changed so much that you can't govern it with a big tough guy anymore, like Semek or Marty McSorley or even a Lucic in today's game with him and Connor McDavid. That you've got to protect yourself a little bit, walk away from it at this point in time in the game, and don't let those little things bother you, because those things don't win games for you. It's you performing as a top level and the best performance, and that's how we won all the championships. Is we learned to groove. You got to take a hit and then just walk away from any extracurricular activity going on.
Glenn, does it make the game better or worse?
From with the hitting, or
Yeah, just the
I
fact.
don't understand the question.
Just because you're not able to protect your players like you were in that day.
Does it make the game better or worse? I think today's game overall is better than the way we played it. I think it's faster. This time of the year is always fun and great to watch because there's so much going on. There's a game inside of every game, and you got to be able to, match. Coaches got to be able to match up. You got to have a game plan and set and be able to adapt to the other team in midstream of any shift, of any period, of any game that they might have thrown some other kind of curveball at you, so that you can adapt your game and your players around that. And I think that comes down to coaching and the availability of key players in key situations and matching lines up against. So is the game better or worse? I think it's a better game today.
Glenn, when we're looking at that series with the Oilers winning 2 in California, the Ducks returning the favor, winning 2 in Edmonton, what are you anticipating here for a Game 5 tonight?
Overtime.
Yeah.
And just don't make a mistake. It's funny in most of these sports that you play is that, the team that makes fewer mistakes is the team that wins. And I mean, that's a perfect example of, watching a key guy. I mean, Gatslaff is just on fire right now, and Edmonton kind of, you got to keep your head above water, and every player on the ice has got to be aware that he is on the ice, and, give him, you got to be in front of him. You can't give him time to make a play, because his passing is absolutely incredible, and he's just phenomenal out there, and he's just dominating the game.
We're in conversation with Glenn Anderson here on rawmike.richards.com. And I'm just curious, Glenn, looking at the job that Todd McLennan has done, Peter Chiarelli, does that get overlooked, just the kind of, accomplishment that they've got in putting the team on the ice that they do?
No, I think they've done a phenomenal job as far as putting lines together that in a short period of time that they've had, and they've come to the forefront. I mean, Edmonton's, I think, is on a roll right now. They've got a goalie that can win a game on his own, and they've got the capability going the distance. I think they've figured it out that they've got to stay disciplined and basically score when you're given that opportunity. You're not getting a lot of opportunities in the playoffs, but when you do get that opportunity, you got to be able to bury it in the back of the net. And I think both the general manager and the coaching staff, that organization has really come through in the last year. It's just amazing to watch, and I think it's great for Canada to have the Oilers back in the playoffs again.
Yeah, it certainly is. Glenn, speaking of one of your other teams, and you seem to have a lot of, your former teams have done so well this year as far as the Blues, Leafs, Rangers, and Oilers. Let's talk about the Rangers for a second. They win 2 at MSG, and I don't know about you, but the convincing matter of that win yesterday almost sees that this is a total role reversal, and I would be surprised, Glenn, if the New York Rangers don't win the next 2 games and finish the Ottawa Senators.
Well, it took them a little while to break that trap down with the 1-3-1 and the way Ottawa's playing. And both those games up in Ottawa could have gone either way. I mean, Carlson scores off, the Lundqvist is back from the corner. Those things are going to happen, but you prefer not to have them happen as a game-winning goal. You want it to happen in the middle of the game. So, they kind of shot themselves in the foot in the second game. They had that game won. It could easily be 3-1 right now, or the series could be over. But that's hockey. That's why there's the best-of-7 series. And they kind of figured out you just can't if you give a team an inch, they'll take a mile. So, I mean, you got to be aware of it. And at this stage, a series tied 2-2 going back on the road. They're a great road team. They just stick to your game plan. Everyone says be patient because it's this very high trap, but they're using a high trap too. So it's a very defensive battle. And like I say, when you get your chance, bury it.
Glenn, it's interesting being around some hockey parents when the composite stick shatters yet again. Last night there were a lot of hockey parents and fathers sort of grimacing, saying, See, I told you. Those sticks aren't any good, blah, 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 all the money that goes into it. It just, I'm pretty sure in the day wooden sticks did break, but it just seems to be a point of contention. And I just wonder, is there some point where, that actual instrument cost a team a game, a series? Where do you stand on the composite stick?
I think it's fine. I think, back in the day, there was a couple of things that, we did, and it was the curve. So we weren't allowed to have very big curves. I think you're allowed to have a dime go, with a curve. I think that's why you see a lot of players not have big curves. But in today's game, the curve isn't the issue. But the last 2-3 minutes of, even now, 4 or 5 minutes of every game, get a stick that is, graphite, that is not going to break on a consistent basis. The stick companies can make unbreakable sticks, or ones that are not going to have fractures after you've hit someone and you don't realize that it is broken, and then you kind of go and take a shot or something and it snaps. So it's up to the player and the teams themselves to govern what they should use or how they should use it. But I'm sure if I was a coach, I'd be telling the guys, listen, especially the last 5 minutes of every game, make sure you have a stick that does not break. And they've got the capability of making those type of sticks and implement it into the workflow. But I'm glad you guys have noticed as much as everyone else is that those sticks they're breaking at crucial times, which is kind of more obvious. It's the same stick. They haven't changed. Just because it's the playoffs, you're noticing it a lot more.
Yeah, certainly are. We're on the line with Glenn Anderson. He's a Hockey Hall of Famer, 6-time Stanley Cup champion, 4-time All-Star, and he joins us on the program. You know what? Circling back to protection and so forth, Glenn, I know this has happened a couple days ago, but it's still in and out of the news, and of course it's one of the highlight series with the Washington Capitals and Pittsburgh Penguins. With the Matt Niskanen cross-check, there was debate whether or not that deserved extra time as far as suspension is concerned. When you view that incident, and considering it was against Sidney Crosby, were you surprised that there was nothing else handed down from the NHL offices?
You can look at it a lot of ways. I mean, if you want to go back, I'm not chomping on sour grapes, but go back to the call on Dougie Gilmour when Gretzky hit him.
Here we go.
Good call, Glenn. Good call.
You open up a can of worms there, and you can have at it, So the player, I don't think the player meant to do it the way he was coming across. If he's not there and Crosby just falls down the way his legs were crossed and falling to the ice, he doesn't get hurt. And he slides into the corner and plays over. Hard back check, you're coming back, you're kind of, you're as a player, you're trying to get back to that far post to protect that post and protect your goalie. And it's a reaction. So if someone's coming at you, you kind of even close your eyes at times, and you kind of just, you automatically bring your arms up if someone's hitting you. And that's basically what was going on. And there was a collision that was, I think, you can hear two sides of the story. You're going to hear it from the Pittsburgh side, and then you're going to hear it from the Washington side. And somewhere in between there is what's going to happen. It's unfortunate that Crosby got that hurt. I hate to see stuff like that happen, because especially, he's a great. He's, if not the greatest, he's in the top 2 to watch today because he controls the game so much, and he's such an asset out on the ice. And but Pittsburgh went out there and they won without him. So I mean, that gives kudos to the team on how great that Pittsburgh team is.
Hey, Glenn.
So as far as getting suspended,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the right call. It was pure accident. The guys in today's game are aware that they have to be in control of their stick, and the stick was down, and it was just a reaction thing. And in my opinion, that's what happened.
Glenn, I mean, coming from the dynasty that you did, it's so hard to actually even fathom in this day, those kinds of championships and back-to-back and that kind of domination. So, in looking at what does a dynasty mean now? And I sort of look back, and Dave and I talk about it when I look at the success that the Blackhawks had in a 2 or 3 year period, or what Daryl Sutter did in Los Angeles for the 2 or 3 years. Is that maybe the new definition of dynasty? Because I can't see, teams going back to 2, 3, 4, and 5. I just don't know if we have the ability of these athletes to actually do that in the modern day.
Well, you do. That's when the trick is of being a great GM or coach, because there's a common denominator that's happened. Go back to Al Arbor's days with the team that they had with the Islanders in the 80s. They basically had a core group of, Bossy, Trottier, Billy Smith, Clark Gillies, and you have a Nystrom. Basically that core group, they stuck together. And then you fill it in with like a Billy Carroll, a Butch Goring, guys that come up and play phenomenal over, and they stick. They stick in the lineup. And what's happened in today's era, our era, Slats did a phenomenal job with keeping 7 guys together, and then brought guys in at the trading deadline every year. Every year we had new guys come into the lineup at the trading deadline, and that played absolutely fantastic and made a huge difference in us on our run to the Stanley Cup. And then in the new era, you've got Chicago filling spots on a regular basis, like Versteeg or a Bickle or a Shaw, guys like that came in and just performed phenomenally. And now Pittsburgh's got some kids on their team that are stepping up to play. One kid's leading the league in scoring, so in the playoffs. So you guys that, it's up to your general manager and your coach and bringing these players in and putting them into a spot with the key all-stars, and they fit in like a glove, and it makes basically a fantastic team over a period of time and a dynasty.
Yeah, it certainly does. Glenn, one final question for you, because we know about the Hall of Fame career with the NHL and the teams that you played with and the scoring records and just the brilliant career that you had. But I have to ask you about international play. You've played in the German league, the Swiss league, the Italian league, and the Finnish league. Which one of the 4 was your favorite, and why?
Well, I'll answer the question, but on a quick note, I wanted to play in every league possible, and especially when I was younger, I wanted to play against the best, and I think at the best at that time were the Russians when I was 12. So, you had the Iron Curtain up, and I thought they were the best, but I thought, if I had an opportunity to travel the world and witness different cultures and different languages was kind of my goal at 18. And turning pro didn't give me the opportunity, but that was one of my goals that I had written down, that I wanted to play in every country possible and be part of that country and their culture and their language. And I was fortunate enough at the end of my career I could do it with blockouts and availability that I could still skate a little bit. So as far as being the best country to play in, they were all unique and different. And I think the talent, especially in the 80s and the 90s, is you don't realize how good they are over there. I mean, those leagues are great. They just, you know, all the teams have got systems, very systematic, a little bit bigger rink, more of a finesse game, not a hitting game and contact, but very systematic and great players, great skill players, especially your top two lines, and then you've got your imports of guys that kind of lead the role back when I played. But as far as the best country, I think Switzerland was, I'd say, just because of the Spangler Cup was such a great tournament, and a lot of people forget how, like in today's game, everyone knows about the Spangler Cup, but when we played, it wasn't that big of a deal. So, but if you play in that type of a tournament, you don't realize how tough it is until you're in it, and that's one of the toughest tournaments to win. And I was happy to be a part of it and win medals the 2 times that I did play in it. And Switzerland was an easy 4-hour car ride or bus ride to the furthest game away, and it made it quite easy to travel, and the talent was great. Played against every nationality in that country, and it was a great country. The people were great, and just loved playing there.
Well, Glenn, you've certainly had, and people will talk about a remarkable career, but when listening to you here today, it's been a remarkable life, and one that I think it's great to hear someone that it's calculated. I mean, you have made the most out of what you've had, not only on the ice but off the ice. And so, as much as people I know are going to want to talk about the hardware and the rings, I mean, what you talked about here today was just what you have as a human being. And I think sometimes that gets lost a little bit, but I think it's for those watching on our YouTube channel, those that will download this podcast, I think they'll be pleased to know that probably one of their favorite players has also maybe lived the kind of life that people should strive for.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I everything that I've done is because of the game. I'm just so fortunate and lucky that I've been able to play the game, and I give everything back to the game, and I've always have, and I love playing for my country. Love playing for Canada on a regular basis. And people tell me people tell me about my stats. Oh, did you know you did this and you did that? I go, geez, I didn't know that one. I didn't know that one. And you hold the record for this one and that. And I go, wow, that's
pretty good.
Pretty impressive. Yeah, absolutely.
Like
this Anderson guy's good.
Yeah, who is that guy?
Yeah.
It was someone told me the other day about, oh yeah, do you know that you played in 12 game sevens in the playoffs? I go, has it been that many? Wow. And you're second, but you've got the best winning percentage. You've won more games and been in more. You've got the best winning percentage when it comes down to game 7. You've won 8 of your 12 game 7s that you've been in.
Well,
I didn't know that.
Well, and I hope with all of that, at least because you're in one of my favorite cities right now, that if you go down, I think it's Fifth Ave. Isn't Fifth Ave? Or Fourth Ave?
Oh my God!
Yeah. At least, please tell me when Glenn Anderson goes into that cigar, that store, the lounge out the front, that you get free cigars. At least tell me you got something like that going for you.
I've taken this game called pickleball up. I don't know if you've heard about
pickleball.
It,
No.
Yeah, it's in a half of a tennis court, and it's ping pong on steroids. Basically, you play with a wiffle ball, and it's just like unbelievable. So, we played 3 or 4 hours yesterday, and I'm just feeling it today. So.
Well, people are going by that court saying, is that Glenn Anderson playing pickleball? They go, nah, he'd never do that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, they go, who's that?
Hey, Glenn, thanks so much for spending the time with us down south, but great catching up with you. It's been a wonderful time here today on RawMikeRichards.com.
All the best, guys. Have a good one, and keep watching. Great job. Love your show.
That was fantastic. That is Glenn
Thanks,
Anderson joining us here today, and there goes the weirdo sound effect that happens with Skype. I don't know what that's all
Hey,
about.
that's just Skype being Skype, right?
So it's got to be probably European, is it?
Glenn Anderson's pretty awesome, though.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid, being a Winnipeg Jets fan, this guy gave me nightmares just because if it wasn't the Gretzky line that come out, it would be the Messier line with Glenn Anderson that would come out. And it's just like they would bombard you with how skilled they were offensively. I once told him in an interview we've had before, the 80s Oilers is the greatest team I've ever seen, and I would debate that's the greatest hockey team in the history of hockey. Like, that's how good that was.
I'm glad you said hockey team because I know that in watching the female lingerie league.
Oh, okay.
That I think LA for a bunch of years.
Okay,
they had a streak going that, well, Dave, let's not debate. Let's agree to disagree. Okay,
enough.
we're just going to play a little clip from the Raptors coming up here. Will Strickland is in, and he's ready to go, and I know he's going to have a lot of things to say. It's not just going to be about basketball here today. We're thrilled to have him in. But looking back at game number 2 as the Raps get ready for a game number 3, do we read too much into it in that domination that the Cavs have? Does this mean that there's some sort of precipice that the Raps have reached? Here we go with what happened, some of the highlights from game number 2.
And the foul. The Eastern Conference semifinal series. Cavaliers trying to make it 2-0. Irving, yes, it's a 3. Finished with only 10 wins in their final 24 games and lost their 4 regular season games. Powell, after the sweep of Indiana, actually 7 days between games. Thompson, it counts on the foul. Do it again after he hit two in a row. Irving took it away from Powell, goes behind the back, and James with the shot. They lead it 97-73. Irving, who's one of the great ball handlers in the game, shows you why. In the postseason history of the Celtics, behind John Havlicek's 54. However, as this fourth quarter opens up, so the fourth quarter underway, here's right to the basket, and he scored.
Inspired a lot of people across the country with the type of performance and the way he's been able to step up in the wake of.
Korver trying to get to a spot. Fry does and hits right on. He's 4 for 4.
There is okay. That is Marv Albert talking about the Raptors and Will Strickland, the youngster from New York City, from a very affluent part of town. He drove up in his gold limousine just moments ago. Yes. Will Strickland, thanks so much for coming in here today on RawMikeRichards.com.
Thanks for having me, Marv. Mike.
Yeah. Geez, last night, and I put out a tweet that talked about the cycle of a team and when it gets to that potential. And when you measure it, and this is really the key, someone said, oh, what, you don't think the last 2 seasons were great, the best 2 seasons that the Raptors have ever had? I said, yeah, but that's the romantic version of what you want to see. And I'm not going to take away by the numbers and where they are. But I'm looking at where we are historically right now in the city. And the caveat to this, Will, is I like Dwayne Casey. I've always liked Dwayne Casey. I like a lot of the players on this team. I think Kyle Lowry would do absolutely anything to win any game, which is why he has back issues and can't sleep. But if I'm looking at the Clevelands of the world and Boston, Washington, maybe a Milwaukee, what we saw from them, just what's happening in that division, I think if you do nothing, Will, that it's death. But am I overplaying it where people are saying, what are you saying, we should tear it all down? I don't know about a tear down because I never think that's a great sign when you have to do that. But if I'm measuring me in this race, in this competition, I know you can't beat Cleveland. You might have difficulty with the Boston and Chicago. And they never want to play. I don't think they ever want to play Chicago. Right. So where are we at with the Raptors, do you think, in your opinion?
Well, it'll depend on what happens tonight. They lose tonight, we're talking exit interviews on Monday. Down 3-0 to the champs. There's a psychological factor you just can't overcome at a certain point. And then you have to talk about reset. And that reset may include no Kyle Lowry, which is going to be tough. And I've talked about this ad nauseum for a while now. Like, depending upon what happens to the Raptors in the playoffs, do you give Kyle Lowry that check? He's going to want that lifetime achievement check. I mean, he was the first.
That's a good way of putting it, though.
It
You're
really
absolutely
is.
right.
Yeah.
It is, and lifetime achievement being he was the first big free agent to ever re-sign here. And he helped start that culture.
Sure he did.
But you have to look at the business for what it is, and it's a tough business. And do you say, okay, we're going to give, a guy on the wrong side of 30, $150 million, and hope that he stays uninjured for the next couple of years? Do we break up he and DeMar? We just gave DeMar $140 million. We're going to have to pay Serge. I think that generally, I'm one of those people who says, in Masai, you must trust. He's been very adept at what he's done in the front office there, getting rid of Andrea Bargnani's contract, the albatross that was Rudy Carlton Gay, the whole thing, right? So you have to look at that and what he brought in and created a culture around Dwayne Casey, has he been a lame duck coach for about 3 years now? Every year someone says, hey, you got to get rid of him, got to get rid of him.
It feels like it.
And he still keeps achieving. But maybe you've reached your ceiling now.
But this is exactly what I'm talking about, this cycle of that potential. And here's the other thing, too. On his resume as a basketball man, I know that he wants to be defense first. And there's nothing wrong with people say, oh, that's boring. No. It's about being defensively accountable. That's a very different conversation. And that will win you a championship. The track meet rarely wins. You're looking at being not everyone's a shutdown either. I understand that too. So does that mean the players that he has on the court, for some of them, aren't his kind of players?
I would say so, but I think that, the personnel means a lot, but they went out and got personnel that was supposed to do the job, and they're not necessarily doing the job. DeMarre Carroll was probably, if you talk about a misstep in Masai's career, that might be D1, because I haven't seen too many. I think he may have waited about 2 years too late on Serge Ibaka as well. He could have had Serge Ibaka a couple of years ago, but he's got him now. I think people will say, well, let's wait and see. Give him a full training camp with Dwayne Casey. Let them work out as a team for a full season. Let's see what they can do. And that might be the reprieve, depending upon how they end up in this series against Cleveland. However, again, if they flame out and lose 4 straight games, does Dwayne Casey get another run at it? Does Kyle Lowry come back? They're going to re-sign Serge Ibaka. He's 27, and he has more years in front of him, right? Kyle Lowry's over 30. It's really a tough thing. And I like Kyle Lowry. I like Serge Ibaka. I don't know if these guys, I've been dragged on the internet and on different shows about saying that I wasn't all that enthused about the signing of Anthony Leon Tucker Jr., better known to you as PJ Tucker. And I wasn't thinking like, oh, he's going to change the fortunes of the Toronto Raptors. Slow it down. He's a good piece, but he's not that guy that's going to change the fortunes. He's going to help slow down LeBron if you can do that. I got $100.
I saw that. I said, there's a lot of guys for $100 who'll give it a shot. It won't last long.
I mean, if a guy, that's light work for a guy that got $139 million.
Totally.
So, I'll give it a shot if you give me a call.
Before we get on with this series and that, because I still have a lot of questions about that, the likelihood of Ibaka and Lowry being signed. Do you think one gets signed over the other? Because you seem to think Serge is here to stay, and you're not so sure about Kyle. And I know it has a lot to do with the series and so forth, but can they both stay moving forward?
Absolutely. If Larry Tannenbaum and Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment are willing to go into that luxury tax,
but are they willing to do that, Will?
That's the whole thing. I mean, they've had opportunities to do it before. So history doesn't speak to that. However, when you're this close, last year you're on the precipice, and, you went 6 games with the Cavs. People felt like, they can get back there.
There was an accomplishment factor,
There really was. So that's something to factor into their decision. However, again, you have to look at the age, and are you really willing to do that? And do you feel like this team is going to be surpassed by the Washingtons, the Milwaukees of the world, the Boston Celtics right now? They're younger. Even though the Raptors have some good young pieces, I don't think they're as accomplished as some of the young pieces on those other teams we just talked about.
Like the Boston Celtics are going to be scary with the draft coming up in the next 2 years. I mean, they've dominated that trade with the Nets, and now they're going to shore up what is a very good team.
Well, you would hope that Trader Danny is going to get something good because he hasn't really, other than like what has that trade yielded so far? They haven't scored any points. All those trades haven't scored 1 point in the playoffs this year.
Right.
So unless they do something effective with this draft, which is a good draft coming up, I don't see them making an impact right away. But again, it's the growth process. You come into a situation where you might end up getting a guy like Gordon Hayward, depending upon what happens in Utah. I mean, that would be tragic for Utah, who's grown with the young team. But, you know, Boston has an opportunity to go after Jimmy Butler. They have the opportunity to go after, Gordon Hayward. So they have a chance to elevate themselves in the East. You know, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, for all it's worth. And I don't want to play conspiracy theorist, so I'll leave that alone.
Oh, no, that's good. I think
we welcome that on this show.
Yeah.
But to be clear, depending upon how their season ends up, are they going to make that decision? And how much do they end up losing from that bench if you re-sign both Kevin Durant and Steph Curry? Kevin Durant's not 23 anymore. He's 29 going toward 30. That's a real thing to think about. Steph Curry's 28. So they're going to sign those contracts, and they want that big money. You know, you see a Russell Westbrook, who is a presumptive MVP for a lot of people, about to re-sign a 5-year, $217 million contract. That's not a typo. And so if these guys see him getting that kind of cheddar, they're going to go after it too.
Bingo.
And that's going to be tough for a couple of teams. But when you go back to the Raptors, what are they going to do? Are they going to spend to compete in that realm? Or are they going to stand pat and hope that what they have is good enough to continue to compete and sell out Jurassic Park and sell out the ACC for as long as they possibly can until there's no more?
We're in studio with Will Strickland here on RawMikeRichards.com, talking a little NBA amongst other things. And, you know, I'd mentioned Chicago. If I'm a Bulls fan, not that I'm not a big enough drinker now, but I would really be drinking because that team would drive me crazy. And I guess I go back to Coach Thibodeau and sort of what he wanted from that team. And there seemed to be a couple of pieces within that team that just weren't a fit. Well, and Joakim Noah and just seemed to what was going on in that locker room. And yet, when you look at the teams that Chicago beats, they beat the upper echelon. They give everyone a real tough time and then lose against teams they should beat. And you mentioned Jimmy Butler maybe not being there. Are they going to straighten that thing out? Because I have to think that it's got to be very frustrating in being a Chicago fan, watching what they do season after season.
It could be, but I like what I thought was totally mismatched pieces with Dwayne Wade, Rajon Rondo, and Jimmy Butler there. If they retain Butler, the man who's going to make the most this summer is Rajon Rondo. He's going to figure out a way to get more money from – I think they have a team option on him, but – Rajon Rondo proved that he was still an effective point guard playing with veteran guys like he did in Boston. And I think it was just a matter of the right situation. And sometimes you have to let Rondo beat Rondo.
It took a while for him to get to that, too, especially considering what he's been through the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, even there this year, I mean, he was benched
at the
a lot.
beginning, exactly.
But once Fred Hoiberg said, you know what, let him go, all of a sudden they started to be a serious contender. I mean, they made the playoffs.
Is Rondo misunderstood? Because a lot of people they roll their eyes. They go, yeah, but you got to understand fit. And if a player's not in the best area to actually reach his potential in the right system, in the right circumstance, then you can't really pound on the guy that much.
Some guys are mercurial like that. I mean, you looked at what he did in Boston. He was a young guy, and they still let him run the team because the veterans understood that, hey, this is how he gets down. And he actually was effective for them. Other than his issues with Rick Carlisle in Dallas, he's been pretty effective where he went. Even in Sacramento, as terrible as they were, he was pretty good there. He was good for DeMarcus Cousins. He was good for that team. And I think that it's just a matter of system and people understanding who he is. Of course, he's misunderstood. There's a perception versus the reality. The teammates will say, oh, he's a great teammate. If you look at him now, they're like, he goes to the D-League games. He helps the D-League team every day. He's looking out for these young guys on the bench like he's been a model teammate. Even when he had issues about how they handled throwing these other kids under the bus, Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler, he's like, well, he was defending those guys too. So you can say what you want to say, but he's a team guy first if you can look at that way. So, it's going to be tough in Chicago. But I look forward to seeing what they're going to do if they re-sign or keep Rajon Rondo there long term. If they can retain Jimmy Butler, then that's a different story.
I'm just going to follow briefly with Chicago here.
And I'm sorry, you were speaking about drinking.
Yeah.
Happy Cinco de Mayweather. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's not Cinco de Mayo. He's taking over the holiday, of course.
Yeah.
So it's Happy Cinco de Mayweather.
Look where we are, Will. Yeah. We glassed in inside a bar. Does this not reek of Mike Richards' all his glory doing a show at a bar? Following with Chicago, it's funny going back to Coach Cal's team at Memphis, and there's Derrick Rose, and you're watching him play, and sometimes when you take a look at NCAA, you sort of break down how many pros do you got, like what pros do you got, and I look at Derrick Rose at that time, and he was just spectacular. I mean, just unbelievable. It's a pro. He's playing. And yet, this strangeness of him, and I'm using that as strange, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, when he starts looking at whether he will have the physical ability to walk on the beach with his grandson. And I think when he said that, he had to be, 23 or 4? Yeah, 25. Yeah. And the players are like, what'd you just say? Right. You're thinking about when you're retiring? We haven't even started playing yet. Was he a strange circumstance in the league? Do you think?
Derek Martell Rose had – I'm good with the governments. Everyone's government information I have.
I was going to say, he knows stuff.
And he's a curious piece to me. I mean, he talks more about his contracts and not playing. I mean, he had an opportunity a couple of years ago after he was injured again. I mean, he's always injured, so I'm trying to fix which injury.
Sure.
But here's a guy, former MVP, who still thinks he's an MVP-level player in the NBA and wants a max contract next year. And the WNBA might have one for him. But in this instance, a guy like that, he fractures the locker room a little bit. And now that kind of permeated what happened. And I don't want to blame everything on the players in New York, but people were looking at that team, and he had the nerve to come out and say, we're a super team. I'm like, dude, this is not 2012. It's 2017. So unless you're playing 2K or something, yeah, it was a super team back then. It's not a super team now. And Derrick Rose, he is a curious case because do you think he's there for the players or is he there for himself? I mean, when he was cleared to play, he was cleared in February one year, in January, didn't play in the playoffs, chose not to play even though he was cleared, not only by his doctors, the team doctors. He chose not to play. And there was a whole idea that, hey, you know what, Derrick Rose, we want him to be all right. And guys in the locker room like, well, if you were cleared, why are you not playing? So the other guys were defending him, and it made for a tough locker room.
Oh, it seemed like it was just toxic.
And then when Jimmy Butler became that guy, he thought, well, I'm supposed to get my spot back. It doesn't happen. It happened to me when I was in university. I thought I was going to keep my spot forever.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember what school you went to.
I went to Rice University.
It was Rice.
The Harvard of the South, sir.
Is that what they call it?
The Harvard of the South.
There's no sign there that says it, is it?
No, I probably put that up myself. But no, it was a great experience.
That's very cool.
I had a great game. I almost had a triple-double and strained my ACL and MCL, and they told me to come back in 4 to 6 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks later, I tried to come back early because I'm insecure. I'm young. I think that I'm going to lose my spot. I re-injured myself. Never really played that much again, and it cost me a lot of money later on in life. So,
but you're a kid. You make that decision when you're insecure.
Well, you think you're invincible too, and you do things like that. And I think that a guy like Derrick Rose had to deal with the insecurities and also the pressure of playing in Chicago, being a guy who wanted to be a Chicago legend, and living up to that MVP season, which I still think was LeBron's MVP, but that's almost every year. But it's tough. I don't begrudge him wanting to make as much money as he can in the NBA because I'm all for the players making money. They always announce the player's salary. We never announce the owner's salary. That's a whole nother conversation as well. And I don't use the word deserve. I think that's the worst word in the English language. But I think he's earned some respect. And he actually played pretty good. But if you get empty calorie stats on a bad team, does that mean that you're at a caliber where you deserve or you've earned, $100 million again? The kind of money that they're throwing around, he might get it somewhere, if not in New York.
That's interesting. Okay, one of the series I like just because of the high profile of it, and we've seen heavyweight fights between these two, San Antonio, Houston. Houston wins the first game by 25. The Spurs return the favor. What are we expecting the rest of this series? This is a 7-game series if there is a 7-game series in this first round, correct?
It could be. The injury to William Anthony Parker Jr. will be very difficult to
guy's
overcome.
good, right?
I'm telling you, I'm not. Just don't think that he can't find you.
He's going to start
Will can
rolling
find
out
you.
the
Yeah,
names
yeah.
too. Right?
But no, I think that's going to shape a lot of what happens in the series. We're going to see how really great Kawhi Leonard is, because Tony Parker, whether he's in the 16th year, whether he's 35 years old or not, was very effective in those games. And even the one they had the blowout loss, he looked like Tony Parker. He looked like the old Tony Parker, not old Tony Parker. So losing him, they're going to play point guard by committee, but Kawhi Leonard's going to have to step up. And these guys who are generally jump shooters, I mean, you live by the three, you die by the three. They're not Golden State, who's one of the top defensive teams in the league as well. Like, a lot of people think they run up the score and all they do is shoot. They play defense. Well, in a way, Houston has some degree of defense, but they don't have defensive stoppers necessarily. Patrick Beverley is 6'1", if that, and you can't depend on him all day. And so this will be a drag out, kind of bang out fight for 7 games. I don't know that San Antonio can outlast them, though.
Yeah.
Because of the loss of Tony Parker, which is odd to say because they've been so consistent. But LaMarcus Aldridge, who is MIA, I think he went to San Antonio with a high, to tell you the truth. He had an opportunity to stay in Portland. He went to did you really think you were going to be the man in San Antonio? Come on, guy.
Yeah,
really?
considering what's there. Yeah.
Come on, guy.
Yeah.
He went to hide, in my opinion. That's me. But, they have all these bigs. They have these really experienced guys. But are they going to beat guys like Lou Williams, who, he doesn't matter what city he's in, he's going to put
It's amazing.
money in the bank all the time. Eric Gordon's had to come back here because he's been uninjured for the most part. Ryan Anderson, the same thing. I like the way that Mike D'Antoni has what he's done with this team. He's probably going to be the coach of the year. It's going to be tough. I mean, I think it's going to go back and forth. Whoever wins, if they split in Houston, whoever wins Game 5 wins the series.
Okay.
And so, that Game 5 is going to be very pivotal. I mean, I'm not saying anything that people don't know necessarily about playoff games and what are the swing games and what they mean to each team because the stats are there for that. But
It's -3 Houston. You got a feeling on that? -3?
No.
No, I was going to say.
No.
I'm just going to lob it out there. I don't know.
No. I mean,
I've never bet before.
They're going to be at home. They're going to be at home. They're going to be feeling comfortable about themselves, and I think that they're going to do a better job of getting James Harden open and for shots that he needs to take.
Yeah, he's got to do better than what he did. He was laying bricks in Game 2.
Well, a lot of guys during the regular season, you see this with DeMar DeRozan. I like DeMar DeRozan. I like his work ethic. He's grown every single year as a player, but these guys who go into the lane and they try to throw their bodies into someone to try and get a foul called in the playoffs, it's dog whistles a lot of times. And then you're going to be frustrated because now you have to go to something else. And what are you going to do? And DeMar DeRozan has to figure that out because he might get more calls here, and James Harden might get more calls at home. But you can't depend on that in a 7-game series. You have to do other things.
It's funny that you said go and hide in San Antonio because of the places I've been to, it's hard to actually hide in San Antonio. It's not that big. They see you on the Riverwalk.
Well,
where are you going to go?
I was in training camp with Dennis Rodman down there in
it's like Mexico there. It's Mexico.
Dennis found places in 1990, whatever it was, 3 or 5 or whatever. Yeah, I think it was 1993. He found places in San Antonio. If you think San Antonio was small now, imagine what it was then.
Sure.
And I'm like, how are you out until 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning? How? But he found them. So, people, he was pretty visible with the hair and
I was
stuff,
going to say.
Yeah.
You talked so Rice at that time, was that Conference USA?
No, we were the Southwest Conference. So I got to play against former Raptor Oliver Miller. I played against him in high school as well. At Arkansas, so we played Arkansas, Texas A&M, back when Texas had Travis Mays, Lance Blanks, and Joey Wright. They used to call themselves the BMW, the ultimate scoring machine.
There you go.
Love that nickname.
That is a good name.
SMU, teams like that. So they were in our conference
when SMU was allowed to play sports.
Yeah, back then.
It depends. You gotta
You know?
give me the year.
Thanks, Eric Dickerson.
Yeah.
So,
No, and so in college ball, and now I'm taking a look, and we'll fast forward all the way to North Carolina winning a national championship. And when you get in that conversation about, and you talked about contracts, and so the one thing for me when I take a look at the one and done, it's so hard to build a program. You're not seeing a lot of programs that got seniors unless you're one
Butler
of those
or
mid-major,
like
or you're out somewhere like a Butler or Wichita State or Gonzaga, these schools. And it seems to be a bit of a shame to me that you can't get back to having not only as players maturing, but as people. I mean, I think that's why you find a Derrick Rose having problems. If people want to talk about some of these other players, because I need you to be a man. Well, some of these guys going from they're spending 1 year in whatever they spend in high school, then they're spending 1 year. Like I look at that Texas team that was Corey Joseph and
Tristan Thompson,
all
those guys.
Rick Barnes had those guys for 1 year.
Rick Barnes is
1 year.
Eddie Mush. If you remember the movie A Bronx Tale, he was Eddie Mush.
Really? That's it, yeah.
Rick Barnes has never really won anything. He had Kevin Durant. What did they win? So, again, you have all this talent, but if you can't turn it around, what are you doing as a coach?
But don't you think that to a degree, whenever I start to lament the fact that they don't stay till they're juniors and seniors, the fact is when they look at the players signing the money they got right now, and then I'm going to turn to you, because when they have these negotiations, these CBAs, you're saying, oh, so you got the 1 year and have the huge contract that looks after my family or all these other families and the kind of money that we have. But now you want me to go yet another year?
Yeah.
So do you think we ever see another year added to what goes on to college ball, or does it stay at the one?
I find it odd that other than football and professional football and professional basketball, that for the most part, no one questions the players who come in. Hockey is a great example, who come in as professionals under the age of 18. No one says anything about that. But, it could be a racial component that's involved there, that the majority of the players in the NFL and NBA are black. And so somehow, by conflation, they're not responsible with their money or they're not mature enough. But what 16 or 18-year-old is responsible enough? But yet and still, you'll give, how old is Connor McDavid? When he signed his contract, how old was he? No one says Jennifer Capriati, when you're 13, you can't play tennis. So I find that a dynamic that comes up, and people make a lot of noise about should the age be different. Again, there's another nonlinear conversation about, if I can go to war at 18 and shoot a gun, why can't I shoot a basketball?
Sure.
So that comes up as well. But I always find I'm curious how that comes up in people's minds. No, I don't know any 18-year-olds that are going to be, mature with their money. But if you're going to give it to them, and if the society and the situation dictates, and they have an opportunity to make that money, why should we begrudge them at all? If they have an opportunity to make that one and done, they're not obligated to the university who's already making money hand over fist. The official ladder of the NCAA, they get money for that. The coaches have TV deals, they have sneaker deals. The kids, you're a booster at Wasamata U, and you buy me a sandwich, and I lose my scholarship.
It's a violation. That's a violation.
I earned.
Yeah,
I did not deserve it. I wasn't given it.
Yeah.
I earned that. And so if a kid goes one and done, at least John Calipari is not going to lie to you about what it is. He goes, I'm a factory for helping these guys get to what they want to do. They didn't come to school to become physicists. They didn't. Let's be honest. They came to play professional sports if they could. And for those who want to get a degree and go and do something else, because, the commercials, we have 360,000 student athletes, and not all of them will go pro in something other than sports. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But the fact of the matter is they don't get a slice of that pie. And I was one of those former athletes. I was part of that class action suit that Ed O'Bannon did for the video games. I still have those video games where you can see my number 24 and my stats are there. It's crazy.
I can be Will Strickland?
No, because I don't think you can even play those video games anymore unless you have a really old console.
I'll go ahead, a Commodore 64 or something. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Atari 2600, ColecoVision. But the one and done thing is tough for I guess people want them to stay in school. But again, young people are going to make the decisions they need to make for their families, whatever the case might be. And the schools are going to thrive no matter what they do, whether it's a one and done. You don't necessarily have to build a great program. You can be a small program and still get on, CBS or whatever 15 times a year. They make lots of money for the university because that's why they want to keep these kids in school, not for their sakes, but for the sake of the university.
The book that I wrote, it's a couple of years ago now, but one of the chapters, and it just said that, the basis of it was I said NCAA players need to be paid. You can't have an entity that owns their likeness and their rights and everything that they have to do and make. It's in the billions. It's in the billions. So NCAA, $4 billion, student athlete, 0. And then all of the violations, like me owning a pizza place and saying, hey, you had a great game tonight, well, I'm going to invite you in. You lose your scholarship. There could be ramifications for the coach, all these things that go on. About a year ago, I want to say that Isaiah Thomas, the Indiana Hoosier, Isaiah Thomas came in. We started talking about Bobby Knight, and I've had a chance to talk to Coach Knight on occasion, which has been really, really interesting. And that the doc that's on Perfect in 76 is
30 for 30. Yeah,
you got to see, because if anyone who hasn't seen it, it's fantastic.
It's excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
Isaiah said, Mike, he said the one thing that his feeling, he goes, the NCAA, they don't understand poor. They don't know poor. And I think that's fair to say. As I'm sitting there saying, wow, wouldn't it be better if kids could have their second year? Well, that's fine sitting from where I'm sitting. But as you said, in other sports, how come I'm not saying that about any of our young world junior players, those who come up through the junior ranks, that I think that they need to have education? And it's a little hypocritical, right, in terms of how we perceive some of these athletes. I'm saying it, my standpoint, selfishly sometimes, is just that I like to see programs a little stronger for a longer period of time. And then I think it would take less time to transfer those young men into the men that we want to see in the NBA, not only as athletes, but as people too, because as you said, I hand that big check to some of these young guys. And we've had Sean Salisbury on the show a lot of times, and he was on the documentary called Broke.
Yeah.
You get that money and they give you that platinum card, or what? No, that's not platinum. What was the one that shows up in the black metal box or whatever?
Yeah, American Express, the black card.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you open that thing up. I'd like to know how many 19 and 20-year-olds can handle that, because I would have been a disaster.
Dude, I took $50,000 of my first little basketball money and walked into a Benz dealership in Houston, Texas, and was like, show me some love. And the minute I gave them that money, the minute they gave me the key to the car, I stuck the key in the ignition, and I swear the car said, dumbass, you just lost $15,000 because it depreciates. And I learned, but again, that's part of the growth process. I already knew that a car depreciated. I already knew that, but I wanted that thing and want to feel like that.
Sure.
And I wasn't even in it. That was like overseas money. That wasn't even NBA money. So now you have so many options now where you can go to China, you can go to Turkey, you can go to Europe, you can play in the D
Israel.
League now.
You can go wherever you want.
You can play in the D League now.
Yeah.
And this new CBA. Now they're sponsored by Gatorade, so it's not the D League anymore. Now it's the G League. And you can make up to $50,000, which is not a lot of money, coming out to play basketball. However, if those guys had not graduated, didn't play basketball, Walmart is an option as well. So if I'm going to make $50,000 playing the game I love and being that close, one step away from being called up to the NBA roster, I'm going to take that shot. And it could be, this is where you get the development. You get the farm teams like in baseball.
Correct.
Hockey
as well. Yep.
I mean, you see less and less African Americans playing baseball as well. There's 62 black players, and I learned that the other day. 62? It sounded like an odd number.
It's amazing.
For the whole Adam Jones thing and CeCe Sabathia saying what he was saying about Boston, and I'm like, 62? I remember the time I didn't think about how many black players in the league until I heard that. And so, they're finding other options that are more lucrative. They give them more freedom and more flexibility of choice. And I think when you try to take away the choice of these young people who don't have many choices before they take that choice, like it's ramen noodles or bust, right? In a lot of cases. And a lot of cases we never hear about. I was very fortunate in that I wanted to get my degree. I was cool with school, but I also wanted to play professional basketball. I also started my own company in my dorm room, which was an NCAA violation. I got kicked off of campus. I had a friend pay my first lasting security on my first apartment before I got my NCAA check. my stipend from them for moving off campus because I wanted to run my company. I ate popcorn every day, 4 or 5 times a day. And I mean, like, I'm serious.
Yeah,
man.
no, I
had a little package of the instant popcorn or whatever it is.
That was your meals.
It was, and it was inside my cupboard, and I kept it there because if I rested, I rusted. So I had to work every single day to make sure that I was earning something. And this is me on scholarship.
Yeah,
in my last year.
You know what the football players say to me, and Dave, I know you've talked to a lot of them, but when I talk, and I'm not saying big schools too, so the Ohio States of the world. And I said, when you look back at your collegiate career, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Now, I think that they're going to talk about a bowl game. Look, a lot of guys are. You always remember your greatest play, an interception, whatever it happens to be. A lot of the football players, when I say, what is that memory? They'll go, starving.
Really?
Hungry. We were hungry all the time. So when Giuseppe is going to give us a free piece of pizza because we just we're Ohio State, we beat Michigan.
That doesn't happen. Go Blue.
Blue Noah. That you just can't do it. So you could lose a scholarship. And I said, I look at some of these things now and think back when you see what a young athlete eats. At the very least, because people say, yeah, but they're privileged because they're being given a scholarship. I go, no, you earn a scholarship.
Yeah.
They don't hand these things out. It's hard to get these things.
When people say it's a free education, a scholarship means you go to school for free. Doesn't mean you're going to get educated. A lot of guys don't even go to class. They just use the thing. And this is not to denigrate those who do. But as you said, the scholarship is earned. There's nothing free about that. So in exchange for that which you've earned, you get room, board, books. You get to play a sport you love.
Yep.
And you get certain privileges that other students on the campus don't get. However, we have the same course load as they do. We have to study as much as they do on top of having a full-time job as a student athlete.
Now, did your coach, because not every coach is built the same way. People talk about Bob Knight, but Bob Knight was ferocious about his student athletes. They had to go to class. They had to achieve a certain, grade point average. They had to.
No,
it was Rice the same way?
I went to Rice. I mean, it's one of the top universities in the country. And, when you have the honor code, like I could take a test we didn't have proctors. When they give you the test, you can go back to your room if you want to read from a book, but you don't want to be seen as a dummy. So you have to sign the honor code. I've neither given nor received any aid on this examination. And that was a very prideful thing for a lot of the students there, whether you played a sport or not. So it meant something to me to keep my grades up. I was on the dean's list a couple of times. But, that was important to me before I even got there. Before I played basketball, I got academic scholarships before I got athletic ones. So, I think there's a sense of pride in that, and I think that my coach and, of course, Rice had a certain standard that you had to keep to even get in there. You couldn't get a 700 in the SAT back then and get into Rice. You just couldn't.
Isn't it like an aeronautical engineer, sort of on that side of it? Doesn't Rice have a lot of that, like sort of the science side of?
Yeah, because it's a liberal arts school, but there's a lot of stuff that they do with NASA.
Right.
And I remember my first day on campus, someone walked up to me and go, "Oh, you're one of the new basketball players, right?" And I go, "No, I'm a student athlete. I go to class before I go to practice." So when you define yourself, you don't allow someone else to define you. Yeah. It becomes a thing where no one ever called me the basketball player again. And I think that's important you look at these young people. I don't know if they know how to define themselves as yet, but they're going to have multiple opportunities with all these other leagues that they can play in. And I think that while it's fun, I love March Madness. I do. Even though it drives me crazy because I know everything's exploited and for $1, and these guys get nothing. And I was part of that process. So, am I a hypocrite? Absolutely.
But to this day, I don't. But to this day, if we're talking right now in 2017, as far as I know, right now in these schools, the way it's set up within, it's not better. It hasn't improved.
No,
it's not better.
No, I mean, well, it's better for the guys who are making money.
Yeah,
the science wing goes up not because of science. No. It goes up because these guys play well in the NCAAs. Even the NIT, you can make money.
The football programs, which generally dwarf what basketball. I mean, you just look at the stadiums alone. You're talking 89,000 people. So if and here's always their argument. Well, if you're a science nerd and you're enjoying the Bunsen burner or you're playing the sousaphone in the band, you thank the football team, and that's what they generate. That's the argument all the time. I go, but that still doesn't make it right.
Yeah, but I would want to be one of the top sousaphone players in the history of sousaphone playing because that's fantastic. I like that. I'm good with that.
Well, we got to have you in again because there's so
We'll work
much
it out.
that we can talk about. It's just
Absolutely.
been a thrill, and only the second guest that we
Correct,
have had
yes.
sitting in that chair.
Oh, I am
Yeah.
privileged and honored.
Yes.
And next time I want to come back, I want to talk some hockey.
Oh,
Okay, then bring it on.
No, we've had. See, here's the thing, and
Now people are going to say Richards is racist. How come the black guy comes on and we only talk about basketball?
No, we
that's
talk-
what I'm going to get now.
we talk some other stuff. But I mean, I enjoy talking about hockey, even though I don't watch it as much. But there's a dynamic about hockey that I like to discuss oftentimes. Plus, I have an odd relationship to Clark Gillies.
Okay, that's really weird
Really?
because
I
he's
do.
going to be on the show at some point.
I do. Well, I've never met him, but I was going to speak at a music conference in 2007, and of all places, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, the
Home of Clark Gillies. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So when I was a kid and I was visiting my grandmother in Detroit, she had Channel 9 in Detroit is CBC. You can because it's
From
right
Windsor,
there-
from Windsor. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can catch the.
So-
right.
I'm flipping the channels because you flip the channels back then like that,
Hey,
and
that one too.
you flip the channels
Yeah,
like
no
that
flicker,
back then.
no flicker.
Absolutely. And the guy goes, "Hello and welcome to Hockey Night in Canada. And there's the pride of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Clark Gillies for the New York Islanders." Right? So I'm like, okay, Detroit, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Oakland, Moose Jaw? Never heard of any place like that. Coming to Canada, trying to play basketball, doing other things. Guy walks up to me on the street, goes, "Where are you from?" Because I guess I didn't look like I was from Toronto. And I go, "Just nightly, Moose Jaw." And the guy goes, "No." I'm like, "Why didn't you think I'm from Moose Jaw?" As luck would have it, I get called to come out there and be a part of this conference. Buffy St. Marie is supposed to give an award on CBC West during this conference. She can't make it because her plane is snowed in or something. Something happened. And so the guy who's running it asked me to tell the story about Clark Gillies on television. So I'm there and I do the thing. I walk up on the stage and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the former president of the Urban Music Association of Canada and the only natural blonde in the room." Ba-dum-bum. And after that, the mayor and two trustees come up to me and they say, "Oh, it's a really great story you told about Moose Jaw. Here's a pin to the city. We want to make you an honorary Moose Javian."
Nice.
Wow.
I kid you not.
Come
Okay.
on,
So at a
people.
dinner later on that night, I'm eating, and the mayor's up on the dais, and he's talking, and he goes, "We'd like to honor someone special who made Moose Jaw really proud today. Will Strickland." I'm mouthful of food. They bring me up to the front of the stage. I was eating a pitchfork steak. Have you ever had one of those?
No.
I don't even know what that
A
is.
boiling cauldron of oil behind this barn with a big cowboy, and he has a pitchfork with 5 steaks on it. He puts it in the oil, spins it around for like 3 minutes, pulls it out. It's actually a really good steak.
I've never even heard of that.
Never heard of that.
I didn't eat it until that time.
Is a steak prepared before, or is it
No,
literally
it's-
goes in?
In the boiling cauldron of oil, and they spin it around, and they pull it out, they dab it down, and you eat it.
Wow.
It's
Sounds
actually
good to
pretty
me.
good.
I'm in.
Yeah,
Sounds
I'm-
good to
I'm-
me.
I'm
Yeah,
in
we're
too.
down with that.
And after I got to the stage, they gave me the key to the city and named me the honorary mayor of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan,
Oh,
because I
there
said
you are.
the story on CBC about Clark Gillies.
I will
very
now refer
cool.
to you as his honor. Isn't that what it is?
I like that.
Your honorship.
I think it was
Your
the
worship.
the right
Your worship.
honorable, or the distinguished.
Okay.
I like
That's
the
good too.
distinguished.
That's good too.
Well, I said something about you on Twitter today, so you'll enjoy that.
Boy, I will say in a very short period of time, you have really made something of yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, no, we're going to end the show with Here We Go. That's all. I'd like to thank Will Strickland for being on the show. Such a fun time. Now, the unofficial mayor,
I am the honorary mayor of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
honorary mayor of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Great story.
Shout out my man Clark Gillies.
I did not see that coming. Also, like to thank Glenn Anderson, who has done relatively well for himself. Talking to him in Naples, Florida, and it's just sort of interesting in a career that most people would look at and say, you know, how did you do that? How'd you play in so many different leagues around the world? It's because of effort. Have yourself a great day. Make sure you download the podcast. Go to rawmikerichard.com and subscribe. Have yourself a great day.